Hello. Everyone who comes to my blog knows I have this big thing about Pegasus. He is actually my icon. Culture of Life News. I have a great interest in all kinds of historical things, and one of the things I'm interested in is the history of money. Money did not appear out of nowhere. It is a creation of humans. We made up money, and we did it for a purpose. Recently, some visitors gave me a wonderful book called The Origins of Value. It's written by a number of professors who have to discuss how we created money out of thin air, what it means, and how it constantly degrades. Though they don't really get that stressed out about the degradation of money, but it's everywhere. One of the professors even remarked that oftentimes when a country's at war, they come up with all kinds of novel ways of financing it. One of them is to create things with paper and add lots of zeros to it. An interesting concept. The very first people who needed money for war were the Sung Chinese, who decided 1,000 years ago a great way to do this was to hand out IOUs, which they called paper money. They didn't use that word, of course. It's a different word they use, but they had that concept. Here is a picture of the very first paper money to ever circulate in the entire world. Whoops, now let me get the book over here. You really can't see too well what it is because it's very faded after many, many centuries of laying dormant. But right in the center is this little animal, and if you look closely at the faint imprint, you can see it's a flying horse. Namely, it's Pegasus. The very first paper money had my magical horse on it. Now, why would Pegasus be on a Chinese piece of money? That doesn't make sense because we usually don't think of Pegasus when we think about money, industry, and power. But going back in time, a lot of people did think about Pegasus a lot. And they did it because he represents a constellation in the night sky, one that people consider to be very important for various reasons. One of the earliest gods of the city of Ur, thousands and thousands of years ago, before the first pyramids even, their icon of a god was Pegasus, but they called him Zug. This Pegasus creature was also in charge of lightning storms as well as finances. Now, why would this be? I have no idea, but people decided early on that the temple would be in charge of storing food over time and then redistributing it during bad times and controlling the flow of food and, of course, taking a cut from the food. And they would be the storehouses for the kings and other early rulers. And for some reason, they latched onto the Pegasus star system to represent this process. One of the early pieces of pottery from New Mexico in the Americas is this dish, which has a picture of two fishes, which is Pisces, and in between the two fishes is this magic square, which looks just like a Chinese Go board, which is all divided up to represent the number of days of the year. They didn't have the worship of horses in New Mexico at this time. Horses were extinct in North America, but they had the Pegasus square, and they knew about the two fishes and how it intersected with the square like that, and they considered it a highly religious and important thing to embody in this piece of art. Now, I happen to have in my possession my own Pegasus. It was given to me by the king of Sikkim back in the 1960s. I immediately fell in love with him, of course. The king knew I had been hit by lightning, and he thought it was really cool that I would have this creature, which is a lightning creature. It's not legal to own one of these. They didn't sell them in stores. You could only get them from the king because they represented the king's deity. On each wing of this particular Pegasus is a fish. There's a fish on the other side here too, which is the two fishes of Pisces. And this creature protected Sikkim's wealth, which I found very amusing. I carry this creature around with me. He's been all over the world with me. When I carry him in the luggage, it always gets inspected. And I think Homeland Security probably wouldn't let me get through with him today. Now, I have another representation of Pegasus, and that is here. This is Athena, and on her helmet is Pegasus. The association of Athena with Pegasus is due to the fact that Pegasus is a very, very old god, and Athena came much later, and she usurped many of Pegasus's attributes, and she became the goddess in charge of industry and intellect and learning and all those other interesting things. But even the ancient Greeks admitted that all the goddesses in charge of art, dance, music, history, mathematics, and so on lived with Pegasus on Mount Olympus. They didn't live with Athena. She embodied it, but Pegasus was it. He was the one that everybody gathered around. He would eat the golden apples, and all the ladies of the various arts and sciences would enjoy themselves immensely in his company. And of course, people would try to ride Pegasus, and they usually get thrown off, which is what they richly deserve. And I can't imagine anyone riding Pegasus. I don't care what the Greeks made up. He's not rideable because he is divine, and yet he's used today for all kinds of other purposes. For example, I have this bell, which was given to me many years ago. It's from India, and it shows Pegasus riding on a bell, which I've used in religious ceremonies when you ring the bell like this. It's really great to do it in a Buddhist temple, for example. Many people in industry today use Pegasus. Artists use it, for instance. Various movie makers use different forms of Pegasus as their icons. And here's an energy Pegasus. That was mobile oil. And it's interesting, too, that they use that symbol because it is all about making money and getting yourself very rich. The question is, how does Pegasus feel about all of this? Why is he connected with things that have to do with us cheating the gods? Because paper money is a swindle. We are not giving out real things. And let's go back to China when we talk about swindling the gods, because the Chinese figured out that if you gave the gods gold money, it disappeared, you couldn't use it anymore, and it was hard to replace. It was gone, unless somebody dug up the grave, and you weren't supposed to do that. So they decided to have paper money at funerals, and instead of burying the rich with a lot of gold, they started to burn money at funerals in order to bribe the gods guarding the gates of death, which is interesting to think that if you had to bribe people in real life to do things, why not bribe the gods? Hey, I could see that. And so they would burn paper money. But then they got smart and they said, why not burn counterfeit money? The gods can't tell. It turns to ashes. They can't go look at it and say, with a microscope and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not real. And so to this day, at Chinese funerals, they burn a lot of fake paper money. On the other hand, the difference between fake paper money and real paper money diminishes over time, just like the US dollar is rapidly closing in on fake funeral money for the Chinese. And that's a story for tomorrow. This was Culture of Life News.